Hey, it's Chris. What games do you have on your shelf that you're going, I need to play this or I need to get rid of it? That's what we're talking about today. 10 games that I go, okay, now I may not have played it at all, or I may not have played it anywhere enough to know whether or not I'm going to keep it or not. 10 games that are going to fall under that because it's either hit the table or hit the road. You ready? A little bit of everything. Don't be surprised, some of this stuff's still in shrink. Let's go. Now let's start with one of the big ones, right? Still in shrink right here. Got a copy of Star Wars frickin' Rebellion. I have the expansion too. I don't know, right? I've criticized, not really criticized, but I've critiqued myself in the past saying the reason I love War of the Ring card game is because I'm never going to get War of the Ring, the second edition, miniature-based, sprawling map and rules overhead game played to the table. Ever. And yet, here we are with the Star Wars equivalent of it, and the expansion to go along with it. I don't know. It says such nostalgia. But I was just talking recently in another video about Star Wars, the deck building behind me, and that encapsulates it only in a nutshell that's more easily, well, played. And so, is this that good? People say the expansion solves some of the issues with the base game in the first place, and I'd love to be able to play it. But my wife does not like games that take more than 5 minutes to explain. And I don't have another dedicated gaming partner, friend, to play with on a consistent enough basis to have this be a game that we can just pull out and play when they come over. And so I need to make more friends. That's essentially what I'm getting out of this video, right? More friends so I can actually get stuff played. Sorry, cat, you can't come in here yet. The second cat, Loki, it's a little white, orange Siamese cat, just walked by the door as I'm filming this. He is incredibly skittish. I just talk about this stuff in the middle of videos, folks. You guys know if you've watched anything. Next up, I got this on crowdfunding last year, at the tail end of the year, like end of November, early December. Pagan, Fate of Roanoke. This is, I think, what people, in their first time around, compared it to like Magic the Gathering or more of your fill for Android Netrunner. Even though you can still get Netrunner, and I'd love to get into that, but this was more of Netrunner in a more self-contained box, if you will. And that feeling of, witch versus hunter. I have an expansion or two to go along with it. This is going to be one of those games, like, if I'm going to play more Marvel Champions, if I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to have to pre-construct for the person I'm playing with, which is going to be, again, my wife, to then say, okay, here you go. But this is also going to be more required repeated plays than a lot of these others of this similar ilk, right? Like if I pull out an Exceed, yeah, you can kind of self-contain that. Characters are all different, but the basic premise mechanism is the same. And it has some of that, but also the dynamic of the meta going back and forth of the decks clashing and how you adapt that to your opponent. I mean, that's my concern. And so I'm super high on it, but again, from Wormgold, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it played. And that's why it's still in shrink. I haven't even dared unwrap it yet. Scare myself with it. I don't think the rules are going to be that bad. I don't think the overhead's going to be that bad. But I think how many times can I play this game to know whether or not my wife is going to like it? Or better phrased, how many times is my wife going to give this a chance to be able to say she likes it or she doesn't? Because there are some games that I love that she doesn't. And there have been some games that she kind of likes more than I do that every once in a while she goes, hey, what about that game? What did we play about that game? That one that I liked the other day with this one and this thing. And I go, yeah, honey, I got rid of that. And that happens occasionally. So that's my big one with that one. The other one that I got from WizKids here, and it's going to be opened, actually after the time of me doing this video, and this is Mage Knight, the Ultimate Edition. This is probably one of the biggest tests for me personally of, I love the idea of this. Will I love how it actually plays and hits the table? I'm a little bit trepidatious, no lie. And that's probably the main reason I've procrastinated from even getting it out at this point, because I am scared that once I get it out and I start playing it, I'm not going to like it. Right? And so it's better to leave it in its box and still think of it, right? This good, right? And that's the phrase, right, that they say, is that it's better to keep your mouth shut and be presumed a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. That's kind of what I'm doing with this, in a sense, if that analogy clicks in your head like it does mine. I'm leaving it in the box to not remove all doubt that I'm gonna not like it. Again, horrible wording there, but you know where I'm going after this. Because this card-driven tableau system that they've got going on there, that everyone talks about these actions and these combinations and the optimization and taking lemons and making the best lemonade that's ever possible with a fantasy flair of magic and spells and everything along those lines. It just sounds so amazing. And I want to love it so much. My precious, my precious. But will I? I'm scared. And that's probably the biggest, takeaway with some of these that are still in shrink, is that I'm scared that expectation is not going to meet reality. That's essentially what it comes down to. So, will it? I hope so. Will it? I don't know. You know what? Let's just actually stay with the same designer. I wasn't planning on this. It's almost like I actually scripted some videos, which I clearly don't if you've ever watched my channel whatsoever. But this is another Vlada game, and I wasn't expecting to do back-to-back, but here you go. Tash Kalar. Probably one of the most underrated, overlooked abstract games out there, because basically you're making these little chess patterns and eliminating your opponent's pieces based off of that, with some asymmetry between the factions and the maneuvering that's a little bit, again, more abstracty. It reminds me probably more of something like Mythic Mischief in the manipulation rather than anything else. And I traded for a copy like 2 years ago with, I think, 2 of the additional expansions. I'm missing like one of the other ones, which I always forget which one. One of the E ones, I think. Ether Fields, Ether Wave. One of those two. It's not Ether Fields, idiot. We'll leave that in there because that's what you get watching my channel. So many abstracts. And so little time. And so little ability to differentiate. And the problem, unlike a lot of the other abstracts I have, is this one has a little bit more overhead. This one has a little bit more complexity. It has a little bit more, less intuitiveness than some of the others, like the Give series, like your Hives, like your Tox. I mean, it's not any less strategic, but it's not as obvious necessarily. And therein lies my dilemma. And I haven't tried playing it with my wife, who is my main abstract partner in these crimes, if you will. So, will it be as good as I hope? Will it really work out? Like, I was rather surprised by another one that I wasn't expecting to like, of the Duke. The other abstract game where you play your tile, and then after you play it, though, you flip it over. And then it completely does something different on the other side. And how that changes the dynamic of the board is very similar in this sense of how different it's going to be as you're going through. So this one may be one of the most underrated abstract games of all time, but again, is it right for me? That's the answer I don't have right now. So we'll see. I had to pull Vagrant Song aside here to get this one out, because this is Ragnarocks from Grey Fox. This was touted on crowdfunding. I watched Alex from Board Game Co's video for the gameplay to see how it actually played. That's what sold me on it. I said, that looks better to me than Santorini. I don't think it was really marketed as the Santorini killer, but I saw a lot of comments during the crowdfunding campaign. I remember saying, this is going to replace Santorini for me. I like Santorini. My wife hates Santorini. So I was like, hey, look. Horrible production, just like the awful looking plastic for Santorini at times. More so the base, let's not kid ourselves. More so the base with the retail version, which is what I have, right? The base is crappy, it wobbles, the floor doesn't sit completely on it well, and they kind of did the same thing with these little rock things here. It uses a very similar vibe where you've got all these different heroes that are all completely asymmetric, and how they manipulate the pieces on the board to basically cut off and enclose areas in that way, as opposed to just trying to stack up like with Santorini. It's kind of a letdown after the first play. Hasn't gotten back to the table since then. Hasn't really sold well on the secondary market either. Like, for a game that has Kickstarter exclusives for a decent additional content, with the wins of whatever expansion that came along with it, I don't see anyone going after it. I've heard very little conversation about this one in general. And so it's one of those that I've sort of avoided because, again, my penchant and my overall bias towards abstracts makes me want to probably like it more than maybe I should. And again, so maybe I'm keeping it in this golden cage, not letting it out to disappoint me. And again, sort of the aesthetic just with the production on this side of things, just, I don't know, it reminds me more of like the Simon He-Man, where the plastic just doesn't look as good as I thought it would. And that's such a minor, trivial thing, right, when we're talking about board games, because I say all the time, on my crowdfunding roundups, like, I don't care about theme. I want gameplay first, foremost, and second as well. And so to have that be so petty thought of in this game, it shouldn't matter that much. But yet somehow my mental block and my paradoxical, rather more hypocritical standpoint there is holding me up. So again, this is one that I am going to have hit the table sooner rather than later. And again, it fits the criteria for games my wife and I should or could like very much because of the abstract, because of the low overhead. But will we? I don't know, but I want to find out. And thankfully, unlike a few of these other games I've already talked about, it's going to be a lot easier to find out in that sense. So that's the great silver lining, if nothing else. We're going to go back over here, and we're actually going to go for the one behind the loop. And that is That Time You Killed Me. You notice a theme? A lot of these are 2 players. This is abstract time travel, multi-play unlocking sort of situation. And my wife and I haven't played through this one yet. Never got past the first game. So we need to get through this because this is either going to be one of my favorite games of all time or it's going to be a complete miss. And that seems to be sort of the dichotomy in this game in a nutshell, is people are either absolutely super, super high or they're just like, hey, that fell flat for me. And it's a Pandasaurus game and it went to retail and it's just sort of been under the radar for a lot of people. I know it got some attention right when it came out, but it was one of those retail releases that you've seen recently, like on the hotness and the hype train, that sort of flares very quickly and then, woo, never hear of it again. And I hate that. And again, that's what makes me anxious. How high am I going to be on it? Is it going to stand the test of time? Is it going to make me want to come back to it? Because again, it's a meta style repeated play after you get through all of it in the first place. So will it stand up? Will I feel like going back to it? Because I guess what I'm talking about here is legacy games where you play through them, and how much do you want to go play with that Ticket to Ride legacy board that you have sitting there? How much do you want to go play with that Pandemic legacy board that you have sitting there? How much do you want to play My City or My Island after you've completed it? I don't hear anybody talking about that ever whatsoever. And this is different, obviously, but it's also a little bit same, right? Is the novelty just in the exploration and the unlocking? Or is the novelty really best once you've done that and then it fully blossoms, right? I think of Zombie Kids and Zombie Teens Evolution that I've played with my 2 older ones. I may have to buy another copy of Zombie Kids Evolution because that was such a hit with them growing up like 3 or 4 years ago that I want my 3-year-old, my now 3-year-old, to experience something like that again. And so is it as good now? No, half of it was playing it, getting to check off the little box, getting to unlock and open the secret envelope, and getting to see what cool thing changed, and getting to see what additional component got added. And that excitement, well, was it there at the end? Yeah, it kind of was. Also kind of wasn't. Great experience. Great experience is what people say with those games. They don't say it's great to keep in your collection. And that's what I'm looking for with all these games. And that's why I'm a little bit divided on this one, whether or not that's going to give me that same experience. I love reaching behind all these shelves, right? Because you get to see actually what's back there alongside of everything else. So I picked this one up on the secondary market. Sorry, Beast is going to crowd the board here. Actually, we'll use Beast to prop it up. This is completely upside down. This is Mission Catastrophe. And it's a cooperative game. This is from the same company that gave us, well, Dwellings of Elder. This is Cardboard Alchemy, the more recent Critter Kitchen or Flamecraft. And I've played through it twice, but it has not hit the table in over a year. And I love the idea of this cooperative nature and having these enemies track you through the board and having to operate these different rooms and manipulate them and make sure they're on in terms of using them, and then just kind of having this randomization that gives me very similar vibes of, well, the loop in some senses. And it's got a couple different modes, but all in all, it was a little bit much, and I'm not sure if it was too random. But to be, again, completely transparent with you guys here, I don't remember. I just don't remember the experience. And it's not a game that's widely available whatsoever. Like, I bought it off of somebody secondhand. This is the deluxe edition with the additional content. But it wasn't an experience that I can recollect now. And you might be saying, well, Chris, well, then just play it again. But at the same time, right, with a lot of the games in my collection, as many as I've played, right, you get feelings when you pick it up. And, you know, sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's not. But the fact that I kind of don't have either at this point, it's kind of weird. The whole, you know, does it bring you joy? Does it spark joy? If you don't love it, don't buy it, right? That's the motto I do with clothes. If I don't love it, that means I'm probably not going to pick it out of my closet to wear it, which means I probably shouldn't buy it in the first place. And the fact that I'm lukewarm on it right now worries me a little bit. Because then that, again, makes me feel like I'm not going to like it as much. And I have no problem purging, but this is another game that I went out of my way to buy, and it's disappointing in that sense when you have that happen and have that be the end result. So, again, something that I need to get to the table more to figure out blank or get off the pot, essentially, if you will. So there you go, Mission Catastrophe. It's doing something different, but is it memorable enough in here? Souls down here. Camera magic there. I went behind Dune Imperium and pulled out Bad Company. This was supposed to be the next one in your lines of your Machi Koros, your Space Bases, your Valerias, if you will. And I picked it up finally. I don't remember if I traded for it, got it in a math trade, or picked it up locally. I can't remember which one. I think it was the math trade. And we played it. And I did really well. And if you've ever heard me talk about on the channel, like, I play Space Base as one of my most played games with my wife. And my record with Space Base is like 1 in 24. Literally. And I won. My wife was like, I don't like this one. I was like, why? She's like, I just don't like it. I don't like the combination of the parts. I don't like the combination of the mechanisms. You know, the strategy wasn't as clear and apparent to her in this as it was to Space Base. So it did not leave a good taste in her mouth. So we haven't really played it since. But again, just like more recently when I talked about Star Wars, the deck building game, all of a sudden, the last time we played that one really clicked for her and she wiped the floor with me. And so I'm wondering if this is going to have the same appeal. You know, I don't mind the track moving around. I think that forces the game to stay relevant. It forces the game to stay, you know, at a fast pace that you need to be keeping up, but you also have to be min-maxing in the other areas. I think that's a nice element. I think the resource management is different enough, and you're not totally dice dependent as you may be in some of the other similar ones. But again, it's also a game that, as much as I kind of liked it, I think people have also been wondering ever since it came out, like, hey, is this going to get an expansion? Sort of like Space Base, sort of like Machi Koro, where you're just feeling like it needs just one other thing to take it from, yeah, this is pretty good, to this is excellent. And I have enough games that are pretty good. I have enough games that we can play together, my wife and I. I need games to be excellent that we play together. And if this doesn't win her over after another play or two, it's easily going to be on the purge pile. Easily. Again, not because I don't like it, but that's my big problem with Santorini, for example. Again, referring back to that one. My wife doesn't like it. She's my main partner with these games. She doesn't like it. It's not going to get played. It's not going to get played. It's better off somewhere else, not taking up space. So is Bad Company going to make the cut? I don't know. Because Space Base also has the Genesis expansion from crowdfunding coming to retail sometime later this year as well. And she didn't like the Shy Pluto expansion. So I'm looking at getting that one to replace it. And if we replace it with that, is this one just totally and utterly unnecessary then as well? Maybe. We'll see. Now I'm going to pull this one off the top shelf. I just lost a piece of it to hold it together. This was an abstract game, wooden box that I backed on crowdfunding called Sum 8 from Turn Up Games. Now you have these little figures, little 8s, that you're basically trying to connect and master before your opponent. It hasn't really reached the table at all, hardly. I got it. It's very beautiful to look at. I mean, this box, folks, is just sweet. The engraving is very nice. I have not heard hide nor hair about this game, period, since it came out. The other game I can think of now that is very similar to this we'll talk up next, which is Soulgivers. Another crowdfunded, indie, dark horse, under the radar, completely unplayed, unmanned, and unmentioned game. But this is an abstract version that, I mean, to be frank, the box is almost more complex than it needs to be. It's beautiful, but the engraving is fantastic. But the issue with just, you know, sliding it on and off is more thought-provoking and more frustrating at times in a very mild way. Very mild. Than I would like. And so I just wonder if the gameplay is going to be the same. This one, just like we said with one or two of the other previous ones, is going to be something that's going to hit the table real quick, real soon, and it's going to be real short to tell how good is it? Is it worth keeping? Could I even sell it on the secondary market if it's that good? I have no idea. Probably not. But at the same time, I'm less concerned about making my money back and more just having time for the stuff I love and not having the space be taken up by stuff that I have no interest in. Right? Yeah. So we'll see. This is a very intriguing step from that side of things. Soulgivers. Now we'll talk about Soulgivers as we near the end here. Crowdfunded French indie company. I looked at this and I said, this is like an abstract combination with an asymmetric powers. You have these characters, we'll say, that are essentially all different, and they decay, meaning you only have so many turns with them, and as they die, they leave their souls on the board, and you can literally pick up their powers and have a combination smattering of these powers to manipulate this capture the flag-esque two-player game to get the flag back to your side as you go along with a limited turn and power situation as a whole, because it just continually gets corrupted and continually dies and continually picking up powers and matching them, and just the number of them increased with the expansions. I haven't played it. Don't have a clue. I've seen a little bit of clamoring here or there, especially on the forums and Board Game Geek, of people really loving it and wondering if there's going to be more. I haven't even given it a second thought at this point, and that's probably been over a year since I crowdfunded it at this time. So it's one that I need to figure out, because I'm looking at it on the floor, partially on this side, partially actually mostly in the cubicle or cubby down there on the calyx, and going, right? Sort of reminds me in a different way of the other indie crowdfunded game with miniatures, Sheol, S-H-E-O-L, which had this darkness and light mechanic, which was very intriguing when it launched. It barely, by the seat of its pants, funded, and has sort of had mixed opinions. People really like it. It's doing something completely different, but super expensive for what it was. So Soulgivers was very similar in that sense, with the way they produced it and the way it's come out. It's beautiful to look at, but is the gameplay going to hold up? So I don't have a clue. We'll see. That's it. There you go. My games from my collection that I need to blank or get off the pot on and figure out whether or not they're going to stay, go, or something else in between. And that's okay, because my goal is not to collect. I have a collection, but I'm not a collector. So I'm not going to say that I'm a player, because I am clearly not a good one, at least. I'm done with the bad dad puns at the end here. So if you like this, if you want to see more, if you want to know what else is coming out like this, there's probably a whole nother video of 10 games I could make in similar regards in the near future of stuff that will be that way. And maybe I'll follow this one up in a couple months and let you know how it went, so that I can say, okay, look guys, I did this, and yes, it's in, or nope, it's gone, it's purged. So that's a good idea. I'll do that. Siri, set reminder for doing video, and I don't have Siri set up in here. I don't need anything spying on me, listening to me do my videos. I got enough of that stuff elsewhere. Okay, peace out. See you around. That's what you get at the rambling, ranting end. Great day. Stay classy. Somewhere between 9 and 10,000. I'm just too tired to even do the over 9,000. Over 9,000! Just kidding! See you around.